Stalked in a Boat by Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I've been interested in the Dogman since my ex-wife and I had some experiences with him back in the 1980s. The one we were stalked by seemed to be semi-aquatic. Why am I saying seemed to be? It was semi-aquatic, and it seemed to have huge, powerful lungs that could hold their breath for lengths of time that would be impossible to us humans. About 200 miles north of the very urban Detroit, Michigan, is located the very rural Oscoda, Michigan, location of the Huron-Manistee National Forests and Cook Dam Pond. Back in the late 1980s, my first wife and I had a country home that we would spend as much time in as we could manage. She would sometimes stay there when I had to go back to Detroit to work, but I would join her again as soon as possible. I was a doctor by trade in those days, and I'm retired now. But to be honest, I never enjoyed any job I ever had. I was born to leisure, but my rich father refused to leave any of his wealth to me because he knew I would waste it in order to goof off. That's what I'm really good at. He gladly put me through medical school, however, thinking that he was helping me to help others. In truth, I was a terrible doctor, and I kept failing upward in a very corrupt business. I only cared about getting away to Cook Dam Pond. I loved that place, but eventually I had to leave it because it didn't love me back. How do I know that? Because the dogman that lived there made it clear that he wanted me to go away. Back then, there used to be a sort of a grocery store that would stay open after sundown over in the direction of Five Channels Dam from our place. We would take our little paddle boat over there and walk to the store to get ice cream or beer when the weather allowed, just because we could. It was such a beautiful little ride that once we settled in and got used to the area, my ex-wife would take the boat herself, alone if I wasn't there. I should point out that it was actually a motorboat. We did have an engine on the back, but we'd paddle because neither of us liked the loud engine very much. I've listened to your show before, and I know the format is people give fake names for their friends and family. I don't want to humanize my ex-wife that much, though, so let's just call her ex-wife, or Alimony Alice, or something like that. I still don't forgive her for a lot of things, but it's important to point out that when this story happened, I still cared about her a lot, and I was extremely upset when I got up to the cabin late one night to find out that she had been crying. I asked her what happened, and she told me the first dogman story I would ever hear in my life, although I wasn't aware at the time that's what it was. Now I'm going to tell it to you, so fasten your safety belts. The whole thing began when the ex-wife decided she wanted ice cream, and she realized that the store I was telling you about was going to close soon. She took the paddle boat out and got some munchies of various kinds, then began to paddle back home in a more leisurely fashion. The water seemed to be carrying her in the direction she needed to go, so she decided to lay back for a few minutes and watch the stars up in the sky. She told me she was about to nod off when something bumped into the boat. She smelled something awful. She said it smelled like wet dog. Then she saw two tall, pointed, furry dog ears poking up over the side of the boat, and she screamed in terror. Sitting up, she saw the biggest, wettest dog or wolf head in history floating alongside the boat, looking at her. She screamed even louder. The dog reacted by howling back at her, and she freaked completely out. If you can imagine a hysterical woman screaming and a hysterical dog howling, then you're picturing this scene. That wet canine was literally a foot or two away, and she said the head was the size of her entire torso. I assumed at the time that she was exaggerating, but if you keep listening, you'll find out why I now know she was actually telling the truth. So the ex-wife reached for the motorboat engine and started it up, which caused the big dog to swim a small distance away. She was able to get away from him, and he didn't try to pursue. She said she kept her eyes on him and watched his form get smaller and smaller as it faded into the distance. She then gave me a long lecture about how it wasn't just a dog, and it wasn't someone's pet, and it wasn't just trying to be friendly. She insisted that it had malicious intentions toward her, and that she locked up all the doors and windows when she came home. She also told me she would never go out at night up there without me by her side ever again. She got me kind of shaken up, and I felt terrible that she had gone through this. I said something to the effect that the dog might be dangerous. It might have seen her as prey. It might have wanted to have her for dinner. She acted very weirdly after I said that, and it took me a long time to figure out why. Eventually, she let it slip out that she actually felt that the dog was interested in her in some other way, besides just as prey. I still to this day don't know exactly what she meant, but she got the strangest expression on her face whenever we would discuss that stupid dog. The next time my ex-wife wanted something after dark, I took the boat instead of her. On the way there, I was all paranoid, looking around for dogs and cats and crocodiles and bats. A large bug flew by and I ducked. That's how scared I was. After I stopped in the store and got all the stuff that we wanted, I got into a conversation with someone working there about what my wife had said she'd seen. The young woman shopkeeper laughed and said that my wife was known for exaggerating. This surprised me, and I wanted to know who felt that way. She told me everybody did, and then started flirting with me, telling me I deserved a nicer and more down-to-earth kind of wife. She was sort of enchanting to me and built up my ego. I left the store in more of a normal mood, so on the way back, I was far more relaxed in that boat. I felt certain that if I saw a dog, it would be a friendly one. I paddled along, in no rush to get back to my wife, with visions of the store clerk dancing through my head. Then, suddenly, the boat got bumped. Hard. I looked to my left and I saw a dog head floating just above the water that was almost large enough to be an alligator head. I swear, it looked like something out of a horror movie, and I was in an instant panic. "Shoo, doggy, go away," I said, making stupid motions in the air as if the dog could understand sign language. The head lifted a bit above the edge of my boat and turned in my direction. Its eyes glowed like a science fiction monster's eyes, and it bared its teeth to me in an unmistakable show of hostility. I heard a gurgling growl, and my entire body felt like it turned to ice. The dog head lifted up a bit further, and I swung toward it with one of my oars. It ducked down so that I barely missed, and I took the chance to start trying to start the motorboat engine. The dog head rose over the edge of the side of the boat once more, and I tried again and again to start that motor. Grabbing an oar, I sliced at the monster's face like I was trying to stab at it with a knife. This time, it went completely underwater, as though it could breathe under there. My heart was banging so hard in my chest that it hurt, and I pulled on the engine knowing that my life literally depended on it. The engine started and I felt jubilation inside, which ended in the next second when the boat got bumped from the bottom. I almost tipped completely over, and some of my munchy snacks fell overboard. Holding on for dear life, I piloted the boat forward and away from the immediate scene. As I moved forward, I looked back, and I saw that dog swimming for shore. The distance between the head and the paddling back legs was so far, it had to have been a giant dog. Then, as it got close to land, it walked the rest of the way in shallow water. First on all fours, and then, to my complete and utter shock, the thing stood up like a man and shook itself dry on land. Unlike the way it had stared after my ex-wife, it was ignoring me and concerning itself with drying off. So it was a land animal after all. But that was no dog. It had shoulders broader than any man, and dogs aren't supposed to have shoulders at all. I'll be damned if that thing wasn't some kind of prehistoric man with a dog-like head. I had been envisioning its body being canine under the water, but this was a humanoid animal with broad shoulders like He-Man and long bipedal legs. It was like a tight end with a dog head standing on the shore. If that thing had gotten me in the water, I'd have been torn to bits. They would never have even known what happened to me. I'd just be marked down as one of the missing. I felt like throwing up. It was so upsetting. I was shaking all over, and even though I seemed to be out of danger, I felt like I was gonna faint. I watched as the Dogman walked off into a patch of trees, but I didn't feel any safer. I felt so sorry for myself. I felt like it was so completely unfair that I had even been put through that while rowing on the pond. I started getting myself even more upset. And then, the motor ran out of gas. My ex-wife had forgotten to fill it up again. It was out of gas and it sputtered to a halt, and I realized that I was going to have to row home and hope against hope that the Dogman hadn't heard that motor die out. If he did hear, well then I was dead meat, wasn't I? Amazing how necessity will wake you up. I didn't feel half as nauseous or half as sorry for myself, but I felt 10 times as panicked as I grabbed those oars and I started rowing like I was an Olympic champion. I probably set new speed records for that pond, only there wasn't anyone around to time me. When I got back with some of the things I had bought in the store, I told the story to the ex-wife, and she didn't show me any pity at all, trust me. She started yelling at me that I was a weirdo and an idiot for having bought that home in the first place. "What are you, nature boy?" she asked, and then she demanded we get a penthouse on the top floor of an apartment building in the city instead. "You'd rather have a view of Detroit than of the forest and the lake?" I asked, unbelieving. "If there's a linebacker with a dog head living in the stupid lake, then yes," came her delicate reply. So we sold that house, and even though the ex claimed she hated it, I saw her cry when the place was finally sold. Don't feel bad for her, though. She eventually left me for a film producer who was richer than I was. She held me up for 10 years of alimony because that producer was too smart to marry her. He dumped her when she started losing her looks, and she married a lawyer, the poor guy. That was the happiest day of my life because I no longer had to support her in the manner in which she had become accustomed. My advice to you young men: never get married. Well, at least not to a woman. Nothing good can possibly come of it. At least my 2 wives were too selfish to ever have children. Imagine how much more money that would have cost me. I say poor men are lucky if women aren't interested in them. If I had life to live over, I'd have bought cheap cars or inexpensive clothing and pretended I was poor. I'd have either stayed single or married a woman who actually liked me and wasn't out to stick me up. Oh, and also, I never would have bought land that was up inside the territory of the Dogman. We've got another strange Dogman story for you coming up in a second, but first, please join us in thanking this episode's executive producer, Fraggy Dendron. Whenever we feel all tired and craggy, we hope we get a comment from Fraggy. No matter if it's this or any era, it's always nice to hear from Megara. Thank you, Fraggy Dendron, also known as Megara the Fury. Without you, this episode would not exist. In exchange for her kind donations, we share with Fraggy our secret uncensored stories, far too wild to ever run on this channel. If you'd like to be as cool as Fraggy Dendron, just join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or else click the join link under this or any of our videos to become a channel member. Henry Lee Dogman will be along at the end of the show with more details, but now let's jump into our next Dogman story, which we call I Saw a Blue-Eyed Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC. My wife and I were out driving one night, coming home from a visit with friends who lived to the east of us over toward Philadelphia. I had turned off Interstate 76, a little south of Amberson, and I was driving on Cold Spring Road south toward Route 641. This was where the most incredible thing that ever happened to either of us happened. This was where we saw a blue-eyed dogman. That road is just a little two-lane ribbon that runs north and south with two yellow lines going down the center of it. We were both remarking on how pleasant and quiet it was to be out in the country alone. It was even sort of romantic, or so we thought. Neither of us had ever really had any scary experiences with nature. We were both suburban people living cushy suburban lives. We'd never even seen a bear outside of a zoo or circus. We were sheltered, in other words, although neither of us knew it at the time. We thought nature was there to calm and soothe us. We don't think like that any longer. There are no lights on that road, and at night it can get pretty dark. You're really just relying on your headlights, and usually that's all you're going to need. But when my headlights picked up what seemed to be a giant-sized St. Bernard emerging from the woods, we both screamed. I slammed on the brakes because that beast was walking out in front of the car. It was almost the size of a horse, and it was super fat all over. I mean, like Hogzilla level fat. Have you ever seen a fat St. Bernard? Well, imagine one bigger than your car, just trotting out into your lane of traffic. I managed to bring the car to a full stop in the center of the road, and that dog wasn't more than 20 feet in front of us, blocking both lanes with his immense body. This was like a dog that had escaped from a mad doctor's laboratory. I don't know how it could have grown so large. And then it did the most unexpected thing that it could do besides maybe talking or performing ballet. The giant freak of a canine stood up on its hind legs and started barking at us. That was when the light caught its eyes, which were shining bright blue, but a kind of blue I'd never seen before. It was captivating. It was painful to see and yet hard to look away. My wife said, "Look at those eyes," but I couldn't do anything else. They were kind of hypnotic, to be honest. There was something about them that almost seemed to be moving or swirling, but I think it was an optical illusion, really. Maybe a better way to put it was that the shining blue eyes had the effect of making our minds sort of swirl around inside our craniums. If it had just continued to stand there and stare at us, I'm not sure I would have done anything but sit there and stare back. But that 9 or 10 foot tall beast didn't just stand there. It started walking over toward us in the car. It hadn't dropped down to all fours. It walked over sort of like a bear would. Do you know what I mean? But this wasn't any kind of bear. It was a giant super fat St. Bernard. It had patches of white fur and patches of brown fur. It had St. Bernard floppy ears. It had St. Bernard eyes, only blue. As the dogman walked closer to the car, it started coming over to my side, the driver's side. And as it did so, its eyes went out of my view because the head was just so high up in the air. The roof of the car blocked my ability to see the eyes, you know? And in that moment, I felt sort of like I was almost waking up from a dream. I felt like I had been set free, and I had control of myself again. So I thought, well, if I'm in control, what do I want to do? And I answered myself, I want to get the hell out of here. That's what I want to do. So I floored the gas pedal and sped past that dogman, almost hitting into it. The monster man moved out of the way in time, though, and we motored right past it. I got us up to 60 miles an hour, as fast as the car could handle it, and my wife screamed. She told me later that she had wanted to scream the entire time, but she only actually did it once she wasn't looking at those strange blue eyes any longer. I don't think the creature ran after us. I have, in the months since this happened, learned a bit about Dogman in Pennsylvania, and I know some of them do chase cars according to the stories. This one was a big, lumbering sort of guy, and I don't think he could even walk all that fast, let alone run. Maybe if he went on a diet, but I think he still had all his pandemic weight, if you know what I mean. So, if you are driving through the wilder parts of Pennsylvania at night, be careful. I think that's a window area in there. I think creatures come on in from other realities and then walk right back before the sun comes up. Don't speed over there. Be ready to stop suddenly if something jumps out onto the road in front of you. But if something does, whatever you do, don't look into its strange blue eyes. I know this because I saw a blue-eyed dogman. Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com. And that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. We're working on figuring out how to add the $10 level to the PayPal club too. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.